Okay, we've got another episode of Tailwind. Today we're joined by Brian McDevitt. Brian, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Hey, thanks, Austin. Appreciate you having me on here. As Austin said, my name's Brian McDevitt. I've been a Sandler trainer and coach for about 8.5 years. Prior to that, I spent 25 years as an information technology salesperson and sales leader in terms of, and had a very good run. I was fortunate to be work for some great companies and have a lot of sales success. I first took Sandler back in 2002, was doing well, was, top performer at that point already, but felt I wanted to invest in this career called sales and paid quite a bit of money out of my own pocket. And within 6 months, my sales had gone up over 50% and never went back down. So I've been around Sandler a long time, but an actual trainer for the last 8.5 years.
Yeah, I don't know this is what we were going to talk about today, but how many people that are trainers now for Sandler first got introduced as somebody who got trained in it? Because it seems like I talked to a ton of folk and they're like, it changed my career, and then I decided I got to invest more in it, and that brought them into being a trainer.
Yeah, I don't have any actual percentage, but it's a high number. I mean, not everybody that does what I do has a Sandler background, but yeah, when you sort of see the magic of what it is, how helpful it is both personally and professionally. For me, I had a great corporate job.
Yeah.
I just really had a passion to be an entrepreneur and to help people both personally and professionally through all the things that we teach. And I'm very grateful to be able to do that and help people get better at this wonderful thing we do called sales.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm working on my Sandler training process, but the thing that always sticks with me is like the system and like the approach to stuff and like laying out a very straightforward, templated kind of like, hey, here are the things that you can do. Obviously, don't just like read from a script, but one of the things that I've been enjoying learning about more, and we've been talking about is referrals and how to like, structure that, how to do the process, what's a good way to do it so you don't have to kind of make it up on your own. Tell me a little bit more about your referral strategy, how people should be thinking about
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
process.
yeah. And I will do that. Let me, if I could, just
Oh,
based on the
please.
last thing you said there, Austin.
Yeah.
Um, we all come at and interpret, all of us trainers interpret Sandler a little bit differently. I think it might be helpful to set a little bit of context for how I think about Sandler, and then that dovetails nicely into
Perfect.
referrals. So the way I think about it is no big newsflash here. Salespeople aren't trusted. Therefore, prospects' guard walls are up. So, what
Hmm.
is our job as good consultative salespeople? We're going to do things opposite of the way those traditional pushy salespeople do them so that the guard walls come down. When the guard walls come down, me and the prospect can have an open and honest conversation, which then allows us to get to efficient yeses and nos. Nothing pushy or aggressive about it, but it's going to be a yes. Let's get there in the least amount of time. And even probably more importantly, if it's going to be a no, let's get there quickly. And so there's a lot we unpack to accomplish that. But to me, that's my short definition of what Sandler is and what it's all about.
Yeah.
So with that, we can kind of move over to referrals. I do think visual aids help in the learning. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and just step through a couple of slides here.
Cool.
All right. And there will be you can see that okay?
This looks great.
All right. So the first thing I want to mention here is words matter. So when I teach this concept and when you're thinking about this podcast, it is a podcast on referrals. But the word introduction has a better connotation to it. So if I say, Austin, who can you refer me to? It's just not quite as nice of a word as who might you be comfortable making an introduction to. So that's kind of the first little tip is use the word introduction, not referral.
Hmm.
So the next thing I'll talk about here is if you're someone who has an established business and you have a dozen or more clients, many of you out there listening to this probably have hundreds of clients. In my opinion, in my experience, referrals should be your number one source of new business. And frankly, there shouldn't even be a close second. And I'm going to give you some stats around referrals as we kind of get toward the end of our time together here. But one of the misnomers out there around when to ask, and I'm going to paint out some bullets here, is that we need to sell a deal. They need to have used our product or services for N number of months, and then we can ask. And that's a belief I used to have.
Hmm.
Reality is, and I'm pretty direct, so I hope the audience is okay with that. That's just wrong. That's just, what we would call here at Sandler head trash. The situation is such that at which point you've gone through a selling cycle and you've established enough trust for someone to agree to do business with you, that is a prime opportunity to ask. Products and services are not perfect. The pinnacle of your new client's excitement may just be the time when they sign the contract. And don't wait 6 months halfway through a deployment that may not have gone perfectly. It may not even have been your fault, but we're missing out. So the first thing I want to have people think about is, when should we ask? Well, at the time a deal closes is one, but another one is when you get a compliment. I have trained my brain that whenever a customer says, "You're doing a great job for me and my team," I'm going to say, "Hey, Joe, I really appreciate that." And then I'm going to go into, which I'll demonstrate here in a moment. I'm going to go into, a introduction ask. So if that's a habit we can establish, it's going to pay you back tenfold. I've already mentioned this when the deal is closing at our regular check-in calls. Yes, of course, fine to ask also after deployment. Um, in the IT world, the world that I grew up in, and it's broader than that, but QBR, EBR, QBR stands for Quarterly Business Review, EBR stands for Executive Business Review. So I just want people to be thinking sort of broad about the way that we ask and when we ask and what the timing is. And usually that window of opportunity to ask is much bigger than most salespeople think it is.
Hmm.
Okay. So the main reason for no referrals, no big surprise here on the first couple. The main reason why people don't, any guesses, Austin? Main reason
People,
why people,
they don't ask.
look at that. Bing, bing, bing.
Yeah.
The game show with uh Wheel of, well, no, not Wheel of, what's the game show called where
Oh,
the,
Family Feud.
there it is,
Oh,
Family
yeah,
Feud.
yeah, yeah. All right.
Yeah, so there you go. Number one answer from the survey was they don't ask. Now, we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but this next one I want to slow down a little bit on. One of my passions besides sales is psychology. One of my degrees in college a million years ago was psychology. I also got a degree in finance, which is kind of a weird combo, but it's served me well. So I read psychology books for fun. Let me explain this not specific enough. So, Austin, if I were to ask you, if you were a client of mine and I were to ask you, in fact, I'm going to do a little mini role play here. You don't need to respond. So let's pretend you're a customer. This is the wrong way. I find one of the best ways for people to learn things is to hear it the wrong way and then hear it the right way, and they can see the contrast.
Yeah.
So, hey, Austin, we've been working together for about 6 months now. I know you told me you're very happy. Um, who can you refer me to that has a need for sales training? Okay. That's a terrible ask. Let me explain why it's a terrible ask. It's a terrible ask, and I'll get back to this specific enough as part of my answer. I use the word referral instead of introduction. So that's mistake number one. Mistake number two is I said, "Who do you know on all of God's green earth?" Right? That's a mistake. And I'll come back to why in a second. And the third mistake is, "Who do you know that wants to give me money?" That puts way too much pressure on you. And I'm going to contrast all this, but let me now dig deeper into not specific enough. What we know from psychology and from medical journals and such is the way the brain works is we organize information into silos. What's a silo? I see you used to work over at company X. I see you're connected with Joe Smith on LinkedIn. I see that you regularly attend the following trade show in Vegas. Now I've siloed your brain, and your brain, even if you wanted to refer me to somebody in that first ask, you can't think of anybody because your brain doesn't think across the entire
Yeah.
quantity of people you know. So that's where we want to contrast that. And I'll get to how the opposite of that here in a moment. But does that make sense? Anything I can clarify there, Austin?
No, I think the obvious one is, if somebody asked me, I'd be like, sure. And then I'd just have no idea where to go. And then I'd probably like well intentioned, but forget about it and then not kind of go through and think it through with any sort of like process. But then I like that you're getting more specific on the siloing and the value of that, which is, I think, less obvious and not quite as intuitive on why that's going to be an important change.
Exactly. Most people just don't understand that that broad ask is bad, right? That's the biggest mistake I made, right? So the referral versus introduction, I might be able to get away with that. Um, I would say the second biggest mistake, though, is saying, who do you know that needs sales training? Again, it puts too much pressure on the prospect and the client, and they're not going to give you anything. In fact, I was training a client yesterday on referrals, and they told me they were doing it over email. And I said, how's it working for you? And said, I'm not getting any. And I said, well, that's not surprising. Do it over the phone, and they're gonna start doing it over the phone or Zoom now.
Yeah.
So let me pull up a cornerstone of all things Sandler, and then I'll tell you how it applies to referrals. So if we're struggling with, frankly, anything in life, but let's stay focused on referrals for a minute. So all of a sudden, my customer Joe is not getting as many referrals as he would like to get. So first thing is I'm going to ask, let's go back to don't ask, right? Joe, how many times are you asking? How are you asking? What's the behavior? Are you doing the behavior? What's your mindset? Do you believe that you're doing a great job for your clients and that you can do a great job for your clients' friends? What's your mindset? Do you deserve referrals? Is it comfortable for you? If it's uncomfortable for you, they'll know, and you're going to make it awkward for everyone. It's not uncomfortable for them if you do it right. And I have some data that backs that up in a moment.
Yeah.
And then lastly, what's my technique? How do I go about actually asking? So the point here is whether it's referrals or anything else, I love the BAT as what I call a diagnostic tool. If a certain thing isn't happening, I mean, this could go for losing weight or exercising, right? Am I not doing the behavior? What's my mindset? What's my technique? It's one of those three. Or if it's working well, you probably have all three of these cylinders firing.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. The next concept here, and I only have one more concept, and then we'll get into some demonstration of contrasting a better way to do it here in a moment. Is so there's a cool concept. This is not a Sandler concept called the Pareto principle. It's very broadly true. It's a mathematical principle, I think, originally, but you can look it up. Your listeners can look it up. But here's how it applies to this. 20% of our efforts in the world lead to 80% of our results. If we're good at referrals and introductions and asking for them and getting them, that should absolutely unequivocally be part of the minimal effort that leads to the maximal results. In fact, my belief system and my experience and my clients' experiences, the absolute number one way to build pipeline is referrals. The next one is a giant step down from that, whatever that thing may be, networking events, trade shows, sitting on panels, industry expertise, etc. And then we work down through and probably end up somewhere around cold calls. And I'm not here to say that people shouldn't do cold calls. If it's part of their prospecting motion, have at it. That's something that we teach how to do as well. But the reality is, if we're good at this and if we do it, it should be absolutely part of that 20% that leads to 80% of our results. Okay. And then the last thing before I demonstrate the better way, the improved way to do this is so when I said before that this absolutely works and most people don't ask and all these kind of things, here's what the data shows. And this to me is really important for the listeners to understand. Your clients have been surveyed. Thousands of clients have been surveyed. And they've been asked, are you happy with company XYZ? Are you happy with company ABC? And they say yes. They say, if your salesperson were to ask you for a referral, an introduction, would you give it to them? 85% said yes. 12% of salespeople ask. And it's because either we don't know how, the technique, or we have a weird mindset around it, and we just don't practice it. So let me come up for air, Austin, and see what questions or comments you might have before I do a demonstration of sort of the flip side of the bad ask.
I mean, this graphic right here alone shows you how much opportunity is out there. But I'm actually excited to see what you're talking about with the how I should be structuring my asks and how to do this right.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's you and I just kind of step through this. Is that all right?
Sounds perfect.
All right. So let's pretend, just to give it a tiny bit of context, let's pretend that you're a VP of sales, you've got 20 salespeople, and You and I have been working together 6 months. Okay. Give us a little bit of context. Okay. So, hey, Austin, good seeing you again. I know we have a regular monthly check-in, and so here we are in early July. I just wanted to confirm that things are going well with the team. Anything I can do to do a better job for you?
Everything's fantastic right now. Really enjoying the results at the moment.
All right, good to hear. And if something comes up, you'll let me know.
Of course, yeah.
Okay. So it may or may not surprise you, but most of my new business comes from introductions, Austin. And if you and I can come up with a few names of people that you know well enough, would you feel comfortable sending them an email and copying me?
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
All right, now out of role play for just a sec.
Yeah,
20% of the population, the data shows, no matter how happy they are with you, is not going to make an introduction for you.
yeah,
And if you were to say no in that example, I'm done and I'm going back to my normal agenda. No sweat, no stress, no awkwardness. Okay.
yeah.
All right. So now back into role play. So, hey, I appreciate that very much. I was hoping you might say that. I hope you don't mind. I did a little bit of research before our call here today, and I saw on LinkedIn, it looks like you're pretty well connected to Joe and Sam. Of course, I would give you last names in the real world. Do you know either of them well enough to make an email introduction?
Yeah, I do. I know Sam pretty well.
Okay. You know Sam. All right. So I'm just going to jot down Sam here on my note. Um, Perfect. Now, let me be clear, Austin. He may not need what we have. I'm hoping Sam's a good guy. You're a good guy. I'm a good guy. We're going to have a 15-minute casual conversation. So, what I normally suggest here, if you're open to it, is I have a very short email template that I can send to you. You can modify as you see fit, and then you'll go ahead and fire an email off to Sam and you'll copy me. Would something like that be helpful?
Yeah, it saves me a little bit
Okay.
of time so I don't have to write up this whole email myself.
Exactly. That's the
Yeah,
idea, right? Make it your own, but it typically saves you a little bit of time. Now, here we're coming into the holiday. There's no real rush on my end, but just so that you and I leave our call here today with clear expectations, when do you think you'd have an opportunity to send that email to Sam and copy me?
yeah. 4th of July weekend, we're probably going to try to head out
Yeah.
as soon as possible. So maybe into next week.
End of next week. No sweat, no sweat. So if for some reason it gets buried, I haven't seen it, toward end of day next Friday, how would you like me to just, ping you?
Ping me on that Tuesday afterwards. That works.
Okay, via email, text, what do you prefer?
Shoot me a text.
Text. All right. So I'll put a note in my calendar to do that. I'll send you over that template, and I really appreciate you making an introduction to Sam. All right. So end
Pleasure.
role play clip. All right. So first question I have for you, and I want you to be honest.
Yeah,
How did you feel? And feelings are important, right? We are one of the things we talk about in Sandler, and we know from psychology is that people make decisions emotionally and then they rationalize them intellectually. We are another way to think about that. I read a great quote in a psychology book. We are emotional beings that think. We
yeah.
are not thinking beings with emotion. It's all about where that emphasis is. So whether we're role playing or it's the real life, we still have feelings. So how did you feel having that conversation with me?
Just felt like a
Yeah,
professional, easy to have conversation. Didn't feel
right.
out of the blue or weird or anything. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not pushy. It's not awkward. And the other thing I want to point out to the listeners is the little move I made at the end is what we call a post sell. Most
Mhm.
people don't do that. And that's the whole bit about how much time do you need? How would you like me to follow up? Because here's what happens all the time. You say you'll introduce me to Sam. I send you the template. I didn't do the post sell. Now it's next Thursday and I haven't seen it. And I've got all kinds of thoughts going through my head. Oh man, should I follow up? Should I not follow up? We have all this machinations going on in our head, and it's no good for anybody. Now, when it's that following Tuesday and you've told me to text you, I don't feel awkward texting you, and you don't feel like I'm being a pest texting you because I'm doing exactly what you asked. And
Yeah.
I'm not pressuring you. If you just said, give me 2 weeks, no problem. And you're going to buy into the date because you provided me the date. Alternatively, here's what a lot of salespeople do. Well, I know we're coming to the holiday weekend. You think you can get that sent out by next Wednesday? You say yes, but you're not committed to the yes because it was my date, not your date. So that's the opposite. So again, I use the word introduction. I asked you, I had specific names. That's best. Second best is I see you used to work over at company X, company Y. You belong to these associations and groups and trade shows. Those are my siloed approach. So plan A, strategy A is feed them names that are in your ideal client profile that they're connected to. Strategy B is the silos, right? That we talked about before. But again, the flip side of the wrong things, I used introduction instead of referrals. I gave you very specific names and I made it such that not who wants to give me money, who might be open to a 15-minute casual conversation.
Hmm.
And that's the opposite of the first one I did.
Yeah.
So
And,
that's what I got. I mean, that's a fast sort of, I do this as a whole hour class with breakout and discussion and how might we modify it. Lots of flexibility within Sandler. What we always tell people is understand what we're trying to accomplish, the underpinning psychology underneath it, the whole bit about guard walls down, making people comfortable, right? Being other-centered, not being self-centered and not being pushy or pressuring people. But I have people practice it. I say make it your own, use your own words, but understand the psychology and the intent. That's the key word there, the intent behind what we're trying to accomplish. And I've just seen people, in fact, one quick story comes to mind. One of the times I didn't mention we can ask for a referral is somebody who gives you a no. So, Austin, if you were a VP of sales and you had 20 salespeople and we had a good conversation, but timing wasn't right, if I wasn't pushy, I can get a referral out of no. In fact, I did a training yesterday with a client that had the referrals training the month before, and a woman got on. I began by saying, anybody have any successes to share? This woman, Jackie, said, I have a success. And I said, what is it? She said, well, you taught us referrals last month, and you told us that I could ask a no for a referral. I did, and I got a referral, and I now have an opportunity in my pipeline as a result. Now that's right? Who would have thought we could ask a no for a referral and get one? So there's another opportunity or place that we can ask that most people don't think about.
yeah, I've had like from my own or chances of practicing in referrals. First thought on this is that I have done it poorly and it still worked and it was
There
totally
you
fine.
go.
And
Yeah,
I mean, like obviously, I'm not saying just ignore the technique. It's not applicable. The technique is applicable. It makes it better. Like I'm happy to attest to that. Um, but I can think one very specifically where I got the no, but the no was very conversational, and they were just like, they basically had said, "Hey, this is amazing. I think other people should be doing what you guys are doing for me." And I was like, it was very early in the engagement. I was like, "Well, hey, anyone coming to mind?" And they're like, let me get more months under my belt before I feel comfortable making it because I just want to really truly feel strongly from experience. So it was a no, but it was also a no with a very like, hey, it's a time frame. The reason made perfect sense. And open the opportunity for a follow-up. I haven't hit the couple months, so I'm not rushing it. But it's like, like this is then going to be the opportunity to come back. And it was very comfortable. It was not awkward. We were just having a
good.
conversation and I'm looking forward to reopening it. And maybe it's a no again because they're like, hey, right now, whatever reason, or they're like, actually, you guys didn't meet expectations. That's going to be the hardest part for me. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
at the end of the day, it's been with poor technique and good technique, it's super effective from my own experience.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Just remember when you go back to that person, remember the silos,
Yeah,
right? Remember that when you make that broad ask, who can you introduce me to? Even if they want to help you, they can't, again, it's not the way we organize information. Just
yeah,
not, right? So I
100%.
think that's an important one. Um, any other questions for me before I sort of make my last sort of offer to your folks?
Yeah. So I mean, I think I know where you're going with this. The template you were talking about sending somebody, is that where you're going?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yep.
please.
Okay, all right. So if this was valuable, if you want to learn more, no strings attached. I've gone back to the original slide. Just email me and ask me for the referrals template. I have a two-page document that the first section is a script for how you might ask for the referral. It follows what I just did with you, Austin. There's a second version of how you ask for the referral. And then part three of this two-page document is exactly what I copy and paste. When you say you're going to introduce me to Sam, I copy and paste this, drop it in an email to you. So again, all three parts, two ways to ask, and then an email template that you can use. No strings attached. Happy to provide it to you. And any of your listeners, just have them email and say referrals template in the subject line, and I'll be happy to get that to them.
All right. And besides, obviously grab these templates from Brian. What is that, Brian? What would you say is like if somebody's listening in, I'm gonna get those templates, and then what is something I should apply for my own sales practice? Like the one big takeaway from this conversation that like if you listen for like a solid 20, 25 minutes, but what's the one thing that I have to make sure sticks when I walk away and, start applying something tomorrow?
I think the simplest one I could give you is make asking for referrals a consistent behavior. And then if I could go kind of one little indent under that,
Yeah.
burn into your brain when you get a compliment, ask for a referral. When you get a compliment, ask for a referral. If you can kind of burn that into your brain and all your listeners can burn that into their brain, they're going to do better. So yeah, I mean, look, referrals are the magic pixie dust that can allow us to explode our pipelines if we do it well and if we do it consistently.
Yeah. No, that's great. Brian, I really appreciate you taking the time.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Have a
Thank
good
you.
rest of your day. Take care.